Kal Kadosh.
Here.
Boker Or Bekiim Halacha 6, day 33, page 87. Siman Kuf Samechet 158, Halacha Lamedchet 38. We're talking about now what is the minimum quantity to do Netillat Yadayim for davar shetibulo b'mashke? Okay, that's the question. You understood the question?
Yes. How many olives?
Exactly. Right, what is the minimum? So, chiyuv netila ledavar shetibulo b'mashke, the obligation of Netillat Yadayim for a davar shetibulo b'mashke, mi'ikar adin is going to be davka kesheochel kezait. Specifically, when you're going to eat a kezait. Aval im ochel pachot mikazait, but if you're going to eat less than a kezait, and tzarich netila, you don't need a netila. Ve'af al pi chen, and still, yad shamayim yachush atzmo v'yitol yadav af kesheochel pachot mikazait. A person that's Yireh Shamayim should still suspect and do Netilat Yadayim even if he's going to eat less than a kezait. Yeah? So therefore, yeah, everybody just understood this halacha.
Yes.
So Kal Kadosh, what we asked is that on the night of Pesach, what happens is that we have Kadesh Urchatz Karpas, which means we have Urchatz, and the Urchatz is supposed to be for Karpas, which means the Urchatz, which is a Netilat Yadayim without a beracha, is supposed to be for the Karpas. The Karpas, the Sfaradim do celery dipped in salt water or vinegar, and therefore they tell us to do eat less than a kezait in order for what? Not to get into a problem of beracha charuna. So the question though is, if you're eating less than a kezait, so then you didn't need to do Netilat Yadayim whatsoever, and that's what we just learned in this halacha. So that's the question that I want you guys to have in mind, and let's see if we're going to see an answer. B'ezrat Hashem. Let's see the footnote though. There's the footnote 33. Eating less than a kazait of a moistened food. Okay, everybody has it? It's the footnote. Above in halacha number 2, it was established that technically one is not obligated for Netilat Yadayim if one plans to eat less than a kazait of bread. Logically, the same leniency should apply to moistured foods as well. Meaning like this: can Netilat Yadayim for davar shetibulo b'mashke be more machmir than Netilat Yadayim normal for bread? Can it be more machmir? Obviously not. So if I'm going to ask you a question, if you're going to come and you want to make Netilat Yadayim with a bracha, how much bread do you have to eat? Going in ounces for a solid?
2 ounces. In my bread?
Yes.
2 ounces.
How much is that in grams?
50 grams. 50, 60 grams.
Okay, yes. Yeah, but usually we go grams when we're talking about things. A kabetza. Shulchan Aruch says kabetza. How much is a kabetza? So you're right. It's going to be whether some people say 50, 54, 56, 57, 60, whatever. Okay, fine. Kabetza of bread. What happens if I'm not going to eat a kabetza? What am I supposed to do? It's Seudat Shlishit, right? Some people don't even eat anything in Seudat Shlishit. But fine, we're not going to get into that, right? But let's say, for example, huh? What did you eat? Uh-huh. Yeah. So you eat bread. Kol hakavod. Kol hakavod.
Did you weigh the bread?
Yeah, you listening? So the question is, whoever talked about you? Yeah. So he comes and he says, I'm looking at Jackie.
Look at me, I didn't.
Okay. Yeah.
I did mezonot.
So the question that we ask ourselves is, what happens if I'm going to eat less than a kabetza?
Have one.
Let's say a kazait. I'm going to eat a kazait. Because obviously kazait, you don't be. So you chazak baruch. You do Netilat Yadayim without a bracha. What happens if I'm going to eat less than a kazait? Technically, you don't have to wash. There's a humrah, but mi'ikar adin, there's no Netilat Yadayim. So says the halacha over here in the bottom. One second. Davar shetibulo b'mashke cannot be more chumrah than Netilat Yadayim for a seudah. So just like by Netilat Yadayim for a seudah, less than a kezait, technically you don't even need to wash at all. And that's the psak of the Shulchan Aruch. So therefore, davar shetibulo b'mashke, if you're going to eat less than a kezait, you don't need to. So for example, Ronen asked beforehand, what happens if I'm going to eat one olive? So as long as that one olive, let's say there's small olives and it's going to be less than a kezait, so technically speaking, I shouldn't need to do Netilat Yadayim at all. Right? Why? Right?
What
if you eat every?
No. 1 minute. You start. Yeah, fine. So now he says the Shulchan Aruch, however, ruled that it is necessary to wash hands before eating karpas that is dipped into salt water during the Pesach Seder, even though we eat less than a kazait of the vegetable. So this seems to contradict his own ruling in Siman 158.3 that he says if you're going to eat less than a kazait of bread, there's no obligation to wash the hands. Everybody now understood? One more time. Basically, what happens is that we have a stira in the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch over here in Siman Kuf Samechet Tziv Gimel comes and he says that if you're going to eat bread less than a kazait, you do not need to do Netillat Yadayim at all. There's a Mishnah Bra and everything that it's still a good thing, a chumrah. Beracha on the bread, even on a crumb, you always make a motzi. The first beracha you always need to make, even for a crumb. You eat a crumb, you drink a sip of water, shakol, as long as it's not water. Let's say it's another drink. If it's water, it's only if you're thirsty, chulu, chulu. But let's say the lemonade, whatever you want. A drop, shakol. Eat a piece of anything, whatever the beracha is. For the first blessings, you always make a beracha on any amount. Unless it's tasting, that's something different. Because if you're tasting, you're not really eating. You're just tasting if it's too salty, too da. But if you're eating, the second you eat any amount, first beracha. The after blessing, you always need usually a kazait. So bikat amazon, kazait. Beracha achrona, kazait. Beracha achrona on a drink, there you have a revi'it b'vatachat. So that's going to be 86 cc in one moment, right? That you're coming and you're drinking at not in as a shot glass, but kilu the entire time. Okay, that's going to be for the after blessing. Now, to do in the Netillat Yadayim for Seudah, we said, if it's going to be less than a kazait, are you with me?
Yes.
One more time. Less than a kazait, you don't have to do Netillat Yadayim whatsoever. Kazait to kabetza, Netillat Yadayim without a beracha. Kabetza and onwards, Netillat Yadayim with a beracha. So therefore, I tell a lot of
You're
people...
talking about the bread.
The bread. For Netillat Yadayim for bread. Right? So what happens? I tell a lot of people for Seudah Shlishi, they don't need a kabetza. They bekoshi eat a kazait. So many times I tell them when you're doing Netillat Yadayim, make sure whatever it is. Wait, I don't know. Every bread is different. It's very difficult to say this much. Kabetza. Which one? No, kabetza is around 50 something grams, whatever it is. So let's say 54, 56, whatever.
You get here?
We get challah rolls or water rolls. I don't even know where they get them from. Yeah. So whatever the water rolls that they get. So usually it's around. It's 3/4 or whatever it is. You understand?
The weight and the volume.
Yeah. So okay. So each one with whatever they like. You understand?
Incorporating into the
water halal.
So speak to the kitchen staff. Yeah. So what happens is as follows. Yeah. So what happens now is that right now, if they're going to do Netillat Yadayim, you would have to tell them, listen, how much are you eating? You only eat a kazait. Netillat Yadayim without beracha. A lot of people, they don't know that. So they come, they do Netillat Yadayim, and that's it. And they don't realize, 1 second, but you're not going to eat a kabetza. If you're not going to eat a kabetza, Netillat Yadayim without beracha. Yeah? So you should know, a lot of people, the second that you tell them that, they'll eat the kabetza. Because they feel that it's like fake. It's like, what? I'm doing, you understand? They do the exact same halacha, by the way, you should know. A lot of times, right, if a woman wants to go to the mikveh with nails and nail polish. So there was a famous Rav Eliashiv to do the chatzitza. So for Ashkenazim, by the way, it's much worse than Sfaradim. Because technically for Ashkenazim, the nail itself could be already a chatzitza. For Sfaradim, the nail itself, as long as it's 100% clean, it's not a chatzitza. Even if it's long. There's no chatzitza, as long as it's clean. Now the question is about the nail polish, and so many times they would come and they would say that b'diavad it's okay. Why? Because she wants it there. It's not really. It's clean. It's not really a chatzitza. It's this, that. There's a whole. So what do they come and they tell them? They tell them, you know what? B'diavad. If you're already doing that, very very simple. You know what you do? You go in without a bracha. All of a sudden they feel that it's fake because they feel like what? They're not going to make a bracha. Imagine so they feel that the second that you tell a person not to do a bracha, they're like. So you know what? They're not going to do it. And that's why it's purposely done that way. So that way they'll do the lechatchila. Because why are you going to be a b'diavad Jew? You understand? B'diavad Jew, that's what you are. You have to be a lechatchila Jew. Right? The Jew that everything that you do, you're happy to do it. This is the beauty. So what happens though is the same thing over here. So now we ask the stira. The stira was in halachot of Pesach, it's brought down that you're supposed to eat less than a kazait of the karpas, of the celery. Right? But you still do Netillat Yadayim for the Rosh Tibur Mashke. Now why? Which for bread you don't have to do it, so it doesn't make sense. So says Rav Chida, he suggested that although there's no obligation to wash hands in such a case, it could be that our sages instituted the obligation to wash their hands at this point during the Seder one time, right? Why? Since at one time the custom was to eat more than a kazait. Meaning once upon a time they did eat more than a kazait. So therefore, since once upon a time they did eat more than a kazait, they did Netillat Yadayim Seudah, even though nowadays we don't need a kazait. It is only in most recent generations when the practice of eating less kazait will develop because of the doubt whether or not to make a bracha b'rinei nefashot or not, and therefore by eating less than a kazai, we avoid this issue. Since originally the order of the seder called for the washing the hands of the toilet and eating kazai with more kapas, we maintain that procedure even though we now eat less than a kazai, right? And therefore, technically speaking, right, that means one more time, the way that the Rav Chida answered it is like this. Once upon a time, and by the way, you should know, this is actually the Tur. The Tur does not bring down. The Tur says you should eat a kazai to the kapas. The Tur does, the Tur says you should eat a kazai to the kapas, right? Which means, right, because remember, anytime that it's mentioned achila is always a kazait. So when they come and they tell you you should have the karpas, it was actually having a kazait. So for them, they didn't get into the balagan of the baracha acharona, not the baracha acharona. So therefore, if it was that they used to come and eat the kazait, so they did need to do Netillat Yadayim. Nowadays, generations, we started coming, this is already from the Rav Chida. So imagine, we're still talking about, 200 years ago, they already started saying, no, but baracha acharona, you don't want to get into the baracha nefashot. So they changed it. But even if they changed it, they still left it at the status quo that since once upon a time they did eat the kazait, so they left the Netillat Yadayim there, even though they did it. Next page 88 on the bottom still. According to the Rav Chida, therefore, there is technically no obligation to wash hands when one plans to eat less than a kazait of food moistened with a beverage. Maran the Rishon LeZion, however, pointed out that some poskim ruled that there is an obligation to perform Netillat Yadayim whenever they plan to eat moistened with beverage, even if it's less than a kazait, at any time of the year. They explain that a moistened food calls for Netillat Yadayim more than bread does. So now it's the exact opposite of what we thought at the beginning. We thought that it could not be that davar shetibulo memashke is more chamur than Netillat Yadayim for a seudah. And now we're saying no. Eating bread, right, means eating at a meal, and therefore eating less than a kazait bread is not considered eating at all. But eating some moistened food, however, is a snack. If our sage is obligated us to wash our hands for eating such a food, there's no difference whether you're going to eat a kazait or not a kazait. And this is the opinion of Rav Asher Kubo, right, brought down also. And that's what you understand. I don't know. Yeah? So he says that Rishon LeZion discussed this issue at great length. He concluded that although many poskim disagree with the position of Chida, it cannot be ignored. After all, it concurs, right, with the ruling of the Rashba, the Rashbetz and several Acharonim. Therefore, he concluded that there's sound for basis of leniency in this matter. In fact, there's a compound doubt since the Tosafot ruled that there's no obligation at all nowadays. So therefore it's like a svek. It's like you have Tosafot, you don't need to do it at all. And even if you do, maybe it's less than a kazai, then you don't need to do it at all again. Nevertheless, someone who possesses fear of Hashem should always do it even less than a kazait. So now you understand the answer according to Rav Ovadia. So one more time. According to the Rav Chida, we left it on the original minhag. So the original minhag was to eat a kazait of karpas on the night of Pesach. So even though nowadays we don't do it, we leave it on the original minhag. But according to Rav Ovadia Yosef, it's because we paskin that Netillat Yadayim of Davar Shetibulo Memashke is more strict in a sense than Netillat Yadayim for Seudah. Netillat Yadayim for Seudah is for Seudah. But only if you have a Seudah. If you eat less than a kazait, that's not a Seudah. So therefore, you don't do Netillat Yadayim. Netillat Yadayim and Davar Shetibulo Memashke was even for a snack, for anything. So therefore, what's the difference between whether it's more than a kazait or less than a kazait? So it all depends on the svara, on the logic behind it, nothing to do with the actual halacha. The last halacha lametet on the top. What happens? You're going to eat a food that's got liquids of a mashke which was cooked with it. So צריך ליטול ידיים קודם אכילתו, והוא הדין מאכל שנכבש במשקה, דלצים לך בבית הוא כבישה, which is pickled, ולא מחמתם ולח, and also lach because of it, for example, zetim olives, which were going to be pickled, right, cured, they say, whatever it is, right, or בשמן זית וחמל אפול חמוץ, or pickles, צריך האוכלם ליטול ידיו, you have to do נטילת ידיים. ואם אוכל פחות משיעור כזית, יש להקל, but again, if you're eating less than a kazait, you could be מקל, but like we said in the previous halacha, but again, ירא שמיים should still be מחמיר. Right, let's see the number 34 in the footnote. Maran ruled that if someone eats a cooked food, cooked wheat, right, after it has already become dry, he's not obligated to do Netillat Yadayim. If the food has not yet become dry, so then you should be obligated, right? Rabbeinu Yonah, right? Rabbeinu Yosef. No, trigo, orisa. You cooked it, and now but it's dry. So it's dry, you don't need to do Netillat Yadayim. But what happens if it's still very, very moist?
It's
right?
Very moist always because
no, usually it's not moist. Right, usually it's dry, right? Usually it's so dry.
It has oil. It has.
Okay, fine. Okay, so then but then you're going to get into the other one. How do you call this thing? The question about when you're using utensils, right? You remember about this, so you get into other sfekot as well, and you never eat it with your hands, right? However, though, cited in response of Rabbeinu Avraham ben Yaish, who ruled leniency that even if the food is still moist, it's going to be okay. He reasoned that since the beverage was cooked with the wheat, the beverage has become part of the food and is no longer considered a beverage. He testified this is the ruling of his mentor, Rabbi Shlomo Sagis, right? Rabbeinu Yosef Matrani, he challenged the validity of this ruling, but he did not rule any differently. Rosh Shlomo Luria also ruled leniently. The Turei Zav ruled stringently, and the Magen Avraham likewise said that as long as the food is wet, you should do Netillat Yadayim. The Acharonim ruled stringently in this matter unless there's basis for leniency. This will be explained in the following halacha. Tamatei Yosef concur with this, but he ruled that if the liquid is gelled, it is no longer considered a beverage. The Yad Aron concurred with this leniency based upon the compound doubt. Perhaps halachas like Tosafot, and maybe if it's going to be, maybe it's already going to be like the other Rishonim, that since it might be this gel liquid is not considered a beverage, so therefore you don't need to do it. And again, we have, so basically we do have, think about it, we do have a lot of tzadim lakel. Remember that you always have shitat Tosafot, that even though the halachas don't like that, but it's a snif lakel. Shitat Tosafot is, nowadays you never have to do it again. You never have to do davar shati v'lo b'mashke. That's shitat Tosafot. Then you have that if you're eating the wheat, so you're right, if you're eating with your hands, you're in a problem. But if you're eating with a utensil, that's something else. Then you have another one that's going to be that even if you're going to tell me that you're eating it with a utensil and again you have Tosafot, but 1 second, maybe it's already gelled. It's not really a thing. So if it's dry, lechuli alma, you don't need to do it, right? And remember also, it's cooked. Remember, this is a cooked liquid, because here we're talking about that was another shita to be mekel. You remember we said that anything that was cooked, maybe you don't need it. You don't need to do davar shatu. Davar shatu b'mashke is only something which is not cooked liquids. That's what we said about the soup or things like that. Anything which is cooked, a lot of things that you say that you don't need to. So again, between when you have all these things one after another, so it doesn't make sense, obviously, right? That what we're talking
But
about.
he's talking